Who needs to go to a smoky bar at nighttime? You could just come here on a Sunday morning and get all the good stuff, right? Yeah, they're excellent. Thank you. Good morning. How you doing this morning? Yeah. I love Mother's Day. I love my mother. Hi, Mom, if you're going to watch this later. She's in her own service at her own Center for Spiritual Living. But I really appreciate the energy of the divine feminine. And I've been studying this divine feminine energy for 13 years now. I've been doing women's retreats. And I really got it a couple of years ago. We did this embracing of the divine feminine theme. And I thought it was going to be really easy. But what happens when we embrace the divine feminine is we've birthed something new, which meant that there was a lot of goodness, a big, brand new baby coming out of a very small spot. And it's a little uncomfortable. And that's when I started realizing that the divine feminine, the birthplace of new ideas, comes through the challenges and the difficulties and the darkness, but it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can be an amazing and a glorious thing, and if I'm present through it, I can be a part of the whole experience. And so instead of seeing it as something that's a difficulty, I can see it as a challenge to me being birthed anew, me coming into a new idea of myself that is better than I could have ever been. And that is what each and every one of us do when we change the face of conflict into the face of something that benefits us. So our book of the month is The Eye of the Storm by Gary Simmons. And I talked a little bit about it last week, where he talks about the hurricane. Now, the hurricane is like this gigantic storm, all these different competing winds, and sometimes it's two types of like hot and cold coming together, and it's two different storm systems that kind of clash together. And it swirls around and around. And in the center of the hurricane is the eye. And the eye is the place where there's perfect equilibrium, where there's peace and calm. And Gary Simmons premise for this book is that in any conflict, there is always the eye of the storm. And we can either put our attention on the storm, which is happening and going on, or we can recognize that within that conflict, there's something in there for us, and we can shift our attention to the eye of the storm and have this storm be a benefit to our beingness instead of a detriment. Emma Curtis Hopkins says, "I will tell you that between you and your good, which belongs to you, which you ought to have, is your idea of the absence of good." Again, I will tell you that between you and your good, which belongs to you and which you ought to have, is your idea of the absence of good. Which means there really isn't anything blocking us except our own ideas that there is something blocking us. And it's interesting because when we're talking about conflict, I know that when I get tired or angry or hungry, and maybe I've gone with not enough sleep, and I've gone for several weeks at a time without paying attention to my self-care, that I could be susceptible to illness. And the reason why is because my defenses are not my defenses, but my health is down. Because I'm not taking care of my health and my balance and my wholeness and my well-beingness. So just as if I could have an illness and be susceptible to illness, those same time periods I can be susceptible to conflict. When I am not feeling enough, when I am feeling insecure, when I am tired or hangry, which I get, when I have these experiences, I can have conflict in my life. So conflict is merely an indicator that there's something off. It's not a bad thing. It's just an indicator. As a matter of fact, it's an opportunity to go even deeper and to find ourselves in the wholeness of who we are. So Gary has these 4 winds. He calls the 4 winds of the storm of conflict. So they're the conditions that support the storm of conflict. There's a sense of separation. There's misperception, competition, and defensiveness. Those are the places that we go to in conflict. And those are the 4 different things. We're always in one of those 4 areas if we're in conflict. But the good news is that even though those 4 things are on the outskirts of the storm, there is a center to the storm. There's a place that we can put our attention on to bring us back to ourselves when we notice any one of those conditions going on. And those 4 attributes are the attributes of wholeness, of who we are. They're communion, principle, purpose, and non-resistance. We're going to explore all 4 of those a little bit deeper today. The first one is the sense of separation. Now, I don't know about you. Maybe your parents were not named Mary and Joseph. You might not have been told you are the perfect, beautiful Christ child of God. If you were, that's great, but I'm guessing that 99.9% of you weren't. That even your parents weren't told that either. And what they say is the sins of the father go onto the son. The idea is that the belief systems that our parents have, we inherit as well. And whenever you were born and you didn't get the feedback from your parents that you were the most brilliant, beautiful expression of the divine, there became a sense of separation. This idea that I'm separate, the idea that I'm not enough, the idea that I have to guard myself, or the idea that I need to depend on you for my own well-being, my own connection to myself. And that can lead to this idea of being codependent. Basically, when you need me to be a certain way in order for you to be feel good about yourself, then you're codependent. Codependence is a dependence on something outside of ourselves in order to locate our wholeness, our well-beingness. Like I have to have you say that I'm a good person in order for me to figure out that I'm a good person. Really, you need to get to the sense where you, no matter what anybody says, you know that in everything you're a good person because everybody was born a child of the divine. But if I'm really locked on to that person outside of me telling me who I am and how I am, then it's really easy because if they mess up my life, for instance, then I can blame them for my life being messed up, and I don't have to take any role in my own life. It's a lot easier to be dependent on other people than it is for us to be dependent on ourselves, except when it's not. Because there is some other parent, the parent of the infinite great creator, the infinite everything, that is our true parent, that always loves us and adores us in that perfection, where no matter what we do, we are whole and complete and perfect and loved and adored. But where do I find that? How do I get connected to that? Because I'm feeling separate. Separation supports my conflict because it keeps me from experiencing God in myself, in others, and in life. So the way, in order for me to reconnect, is to embrace this idea of communion. That's common union. Come in union with each other. Relationship is the area where you experience wholeness and worth. You only have one relationship, and that's with the divine. Now, your relationship is triune. It's threefold in nature. It is experienced as a relationship with life, with others, and with ourself. That's the same relationship of the relationship with the divine, or spirit, God, the universe. It's the same thing. But it happens in three ways. And if I can get into the space of coming together in union and realizing there's a unity among us, then I have released my sense of separation. The separation is on the outskirts. It's the place where it looks like everything is separate. But coming together in communion is where I see the one. For instance, think about a symphony. Now, a symphony works together with a common purpose, going together with a movement together to a particular goal, a particular outcome, which is the expression of that creative nature of the divine. Now, each and every one of us could be an instrument in this symphony. And I may be playing my instrument, and it's at a different beat than Esther's instrument. It may be a different beat than Idan. It may be a different beat than each and every person here, but that doesn't matter because we're all working together. I know that my tone, my harmony, the way I do things is in relationship with the whole moving forward. And when I can start seeing that I am in relationship, in unity, in common unity, community with each other, moving forward, then I can start seeing the wholeness and not feel separate, even though I'm my own instrument playing. So that gives me a sense of working together like we're a symphony, a beautiful harmony that is out there for a common purpose. Ernest Holmes said, the secret of spiritual power, do you want to know it? Yes. Dun, 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 is the consciousness of one's union with the whole. That's it. The consciousness of one's union with the whole. That's the secret of spiritual power, is when I shift my consciousness of being in union with the whole. Gary Simmons has a wife. His wife's name is Nan. And he had this example in the book, which I thought was brilliant. And Nan said to him, Gary, you never take me out to dinner. So Gary is like, oh, that is so not true. So what he decides to do is make a list. He makes a list of all the times in the last month, all the places they went out to dinner, and he was like, oh yeah, I got my list. I'm gonna show you. So he goes to Nan, and he says, you said we never go out to dinner. Well, we went out to dinner here, 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 here. And so there, I'm right. Ha! Gary 1. Nan 0. Ha ha! I don't know if anybody in the room has ever done anything like that. He won the argument, but he lost the opportunity to give Nan what she really wanted. He actually punished her. She was being judgmental. She was judging him. And in his reaction of judging him, he judged her back. He reacted back to her. He saw his superiority complex. I am so right, and you are so wrong. But underneath it all, she just wanted to connect with him. That's all she really wanted. He'd been gone doing business trips around the world, and she missed him. And her way of not feeling connected with him was being judgmental. So underneath, for her, she was not feeling whole and complete. And so the judgment was a reflection of her. So anytime anybody's in judgment of you, it's not about you, it's about them. Anytime you're in judgment of somebody else, it is about you. Now, he lost the opportunity to figure out what was going on in the situation, and instead, because of the judgment, he took it to take that he had to prove how good he was. It's such a simple experience that happens in life. But what he did is he proved that he was right, and anybody who's trying to prove they're right, to feel secure about something, really reflects that they're insecure. Because just him having to be the better person proved that he was feeling less than. So she had her own experience of not feeling connected. He had his own experience of not feeling connected. And what he could have done in that situation, because it was a conflict, what he could have done is, if he reacted, he could have immediately apologized and recognized that he reacted. And if he was really connected to his his centeredness, he would want to come in union with her. And in order to come in union with her, a good way he could have done it is by saying, tell me more, Nan. What do you really want? What's missing for you? What do you need? Isn't that a better approach? Wouldn't you love that if you were feeling kind of lost and disconnected, if somebody came at you with that? And that allows them to come in union together, to have communion with each other. So seeing from those eyes helps shift the conflict into a place of wholeness and connection. I'm going to give you a little bit of homework. I invite you to do it, and you online, you can write it down right now. You can make a list of judgments that you have about somebody. Isn't this fun? Yay! And then look at your list of judgments and figure out what is missing for you. Identify what is missing in the situation for you, or what do you need out of the situation. Why did you feel like you needed to judge? Because again, it points back at you. They always say, oh, there's the finger pointing outward. Well, how many are pointing back at you? So the next wind of change is misperception. The Talmud says, we see things not as they are, but as we are. We have viewing points of how we perceive the world. And how we perceive the world is limited to our own structure, our own idea of what the world is. But it gives us an opportunity. Conflict can bring us to the edge of those structures of what we know is, and it can expand us to have a bigger realization, a fuller experience of what the world is. I love this quote from the book. It says, when individuals or communities use conflict as an opportunity to challenge their own way of seeing things, they awaken to new aspects of themselves. What if you did that? What if you used the conflict as an opportunity to challenge your own way of seeing things? Reverend David Robinson has a story about being a cyclist. He used to live here in Seattle, and he had a friend from Florida, and they were cycling around Seattle, and they turned a corner, and right before them was this gigantic hill. And they both uttered something at the same time, and his cycling companion, she said, "Oh God, a hill." And he said, "Oh good, a hill." It's the same hill. But she saw the hill as a threat to her well-being and cycling ability, and that's kind of what conflict is like. But the attitude we bring to something can shift our viewing point. And we can see it as an opportunity to grow, and we can see and look for the good in the situation. If I'm staying safe, I'm not going to experience any growth. What you can do when you have a misperception, because they happen, is that you can see through the eyes of principle. Principle is the way we see the nature of the universe. It's the foundation, it's the essence of the divine. So for instance, what we know through all these different religious belief systems, if you look at Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, they all say the same thing about the nature of the divine, and that God is abundant. God is infinite. And if I look at that as a spiritual principle, then I know it's the foundation of everything that is. So if you were a carpenter leveling a house, you would have tools that level the house. The principles are like our tools that we can call upon to help us get a good foundation in our life, to help us see where our foundation is. If I experience this idea of abundance, then I'm tuned into the principle of the divine. I'm tuned into the principle of God, because God is everywhere present. If you say infinite, that pretty much defines abundance, because there's more than enough. Infinite, it just keeps going on forever, right? So that's the nature of God, is abundance. But let's say I pull out my wallet, and in the wallet I have $72. Now, the $72, I can either feel abundant or I can feel like I'm lacking. The $72 would be the same for anybody in this room. But some of you are going to see the $72 and feel like you don't have enough, and some of you are going to see the $72 and feel like you have plenty. And the idea is, where are you feeling? Where's your center? Where are you coming from when you are experiencing this? Because again, the money is the same for everybody. Now, let's take it a step further. I'm going to go really, really deep here. Let's say there's an offering basket going in front of you. Just pretend. And you have the $72, and you're going to put some in the offering basket. How much are you going to put into the offering basket? How do you feel when you're putting money into the offering basket? Because some people will feel abundant putting money into the offering basket, and some people will feel lack. But if I go to principle, when I go to principle, then I come from that sense of abundance, because I recognize and know that if God is everywhere present, and if God is the nature of abundance, then that exact nature must be in me. I must be a part of that nature. And when I'm coming from principle, I feel that sense of abundance because I'm connected to the I of who I am, which is the principle of abundance. And so that is where I come from when I give forth. But if you're coming from the idea of lack, you can think about, what do I believe? Because my perception of this neutral thing called money is my perception. I created a value system based on it. I created a belief system based on it. And I can just look inside and say, where am I coming from? Do I truly believe and connect to that nature of the divine that is abundance? So that's what you can do, is utilize and figure out, what are the principles, what are the universal ideas of the divine? Love, power, grace, peace. If I'm coming from those principles in my life, then I can use them as a foundation of my actions. The third step, the third wind of conflict, the condition of conflict, is competition. So when we need or value, when what we need or value gets in the way of somebody else's needs and values, conflict occurs. The danger of competition is there's a winner, Gary 1, Nan 0, and a loser. The winner reinforces their need to be right, which really reinforces their inferiority because it masks a sense of insecurity or inadequacy. Competition comes from not knowing our inherent wholeness and being in a universe that provides for all our needs and values. Conflict is rooted in competing needs, goals, and values, and it's systematic of people who have forgotten their purpose, and they've lost their connection within the relationship. So what is purpose? What is my purpose? Why am I here? What is my purpose? Why am I here? That's the third shift into the I. The third shift is finding your purpose, is connecting with your purpose. Now, I'm going to give you a key. Your purpose is to be God in expression. Every challenge, every difficulty, and every temptation asks the question, who are you really? I want you to say after me, I am the way of God. Try it again. I am the way of God.
I am the way of God.
So you're either the way of God or you're in the way of God. And you get to choose. So imagine this, like, I have a cat named Kitty. I love my cat a lot, and she's so adorable. Every morning, she gets up on top of me, and she gets all purry, and she flops down, and her paws are here, and her head's here, and I pet her, and she purrs, and she's adorable. And there's this experience of love expressing through me. Do you know what I'm talking about? You might experience this with a child or your partner, or, and just like it's just this welling up of love. I am the way of God when I am being the expression of love. I am being, and in that moment, both Kitty and I are both being that same expression. We are expressing God as love right then and there. Now, that's really easy for me to do, is I can be the way of God in that moment. But what if there's somebody who is coming at me, who is directly saying things that are harmful or difficult or being combative towards me? What if? Can I be that same sense of heart openness with them? Can I love them that much? Can I be the way of God? In Christianity, they talk about being the Christ child, that every person is anointed like the Christ child. It's the same thing with you. You're anointed. In every story that I feel called to, I love science fiction and I love fantasy. It's like Frodo, Neo, like Jesus. They call him the one. Who's the one? Remember Willow? You're like, gosh, every single one of these fantasy stories are like, you're the one. And there's a reason why we're called. There's a reason why we're called to those messages, to those stories. It's like, I want to know I'm the one. I'm the chosen one. Well, you are the chosen one. You are the chosen one. You get to be the chosen one in that situation that's really difficult to be the way of God. You get to be the way. Can you imagine if somebody showed up and they saw you through the eyes of love when you forgot who you were? Has that ever happened to you? Yeah. And can you imagine if you do that to somebody else when they've forgotten who they are? Because you're each the chosen one. And sometimes we remember and sometimes we forget, but what if you remember your purpose? What if you say in this moment, what is my purpose? Who have I come here to be? Am I the way or am I in the way? The fourth wind is defensiveness. And by defensiveness, just the definition, it implies that there's an adversary, that there's a threat. It's evidence of separation. Really easy. If I pulled a knife out, people would have an instant posturing. I mean, and this is kind of how we are in conflict, right? It's like as if somebody pulled a knife out. And there's a posturing of defensiveness. And what can happen is I can pull myself away, I can withdraw, or I can attack. I can attack the person with the knife. Some of us behave either way, but both ways are defensive. Now, in order for there not to be defensiveness, somebody has to let down their guard. Somebody has to be willing to be vulnerable. So the way to not be defensive is through non-resistance. Realize that you're a center of divine operation. And when somebody is creating that sense of separation, they're creating that sense that there's an adversary and a threat. But what if you were the principle of non-resistance? There's an example that Gary had in the book, and he was teaching this book, well, The Eye of the Storm, before he wrote it. He was teaching it as a workshop to a bunch of ministers in Savannah, Georgia. And so as he's teaching this workshop, it's like a 4-day workshop that he has. And the first day he does it, and then it turns out Hurricane Floyd is heading into Savannah, Georgia, and they have to evacuate. So he decides that he's going to leave, and he has his host take him to the airport. And there's thousands of people at the airport. They're all trying to take off because the entire city is being evacuated. And so there's people from out of town, they're all trying to leave. And there's just this throng, this energy of people that are feeling like really, I don't know if you felt like that, but there's kind of like that, you could feel it when somebody gets in that position of defensiveness. And all of a sudden an announcement goes over the PA. And they say, "We're sorry, everybody, but all remaining flights will be canceled out of Savannah." Now you can imagine there was like mayhem, like everybody starts running to the car rental spots. Everybody starts taking a big, they're trying to get there first because they want to get the last remaining rental cars. And Gary, he's teaching this book, and then all of a sudden he gets caught up in that throng of people. He's like, "Oh my God," and he starts running, he's freaking out. And in that moment, he realizes that he's in a point of resistance to what is. So he decides to do what he teaches and walk his talk. So he takes a moment and he stops. He takes some breaths. He centers himself. He does a prayer. He does an affirmation. I am the place of peace. I am the place where peace shows up. Everything around me can be in chaos, but I will be in the space of peace. I will be in the centeredness of peace. And he shifts himself, and he surrenders to the situation, and he trusts that God is working it out, and it's going to work out for him. And so as he starts walking towards the rental car agency with all the lines of people there, he hears an announcement on the PA. And they say, "Gary Simmons, can you please come to gate 12? Please come to gate 12. Your plane is waiting for you." And it was the last plane taking off to Atlanta, Georgia, and he had gotten the last seat on it. But that's what happens when you surrender to non-resistance. It's kind of like a circuit or Ohm's theory of electricity. So the idea of Ohm's theory of electricity is that more electricity can flow when there's non-resistance. So the more resistance there is in an electrical circuit, then the less electricity can flow through. But that's how it is in our life, too. If I am resistant, I block off the possibilities for the divine. And when I surrender and I open to the idea that the infinite everything is creating it all, and I am in the flow, then unexpected opportunities pop up. Unexpected, because I am available to the flow, to the current of the divine flow, which is, again, infinite possibility, abundance. So I need to be in the state of non-resistance to what is going on in order for those opportunities to see themselves through, where I can just be in the space and know that all is well. One thing to keep in mind, something that Ernest Holmes said, it's here that the mentality performs seeming miracles because there's nothing to hinder the whole from coming through. You see, you are not your experiences. You have experiences, but you are not your experiences. Many people see their experiences as their parts, like this is a part of who I am. But it's kind of like I am not my body, like I'm not my hand, I'm not my foot. I'm something greater than that. It's the same thing with your experiences. So any experience that you're in is not the wholeness of who you are. The wholeness of who you are is that connected spot with the divine. And all those experiences are on the outskirts. And you get to see who you are through those experiences. And they're all put together as opportunities for you to step into that idea of possibility for yourself. One thing I love about the Spanish language is that to be, the verb to be, is two verbs. So there's ser and there's estar. And for the English language, we're just like to be, it's just one thing. I am, that's it. But in Spanish, for instance, ser means a condition that doesn't change. And then there's a star, which is the thing that is changing all the time. So in English, I might say, I am hungry. Well, in Spanish, it would say, I'm having the experience of hunger, because it's transitory. And in English, we might say, I am poor. But in Spanish, it would be like, I'm having the experience of having financial difficulties, because it's transitory. So perhaps we can learn how to change our languaging, because what we want to declare as the I am is the truth of the I am of who we are. And if we're experiencing something that's transitory, that's what we can say is, I'm having the experience of, and that can be the experience of what it is. So think about your wording and think about where you're coming from. I encourage you to embrace the four winds, the conditions that support the storm of conflict, the sense of separation. Instead, have the idea of communion. If you have misperception going on, go to your principle and connect with the principle. If you're feeling like you're in competition, remember your purpose. And if you're feeling defensive, go into the space of non-resistance. I encourage you to take on this week and to be that electrical circuit that opens up to the infinite possibility of God, because I know who you really are, and so it is. Let's pray. Bringing myself back to the center of the I am. The I am that I am, that I am that I am. Wholeness, beauty, abundance. The infinite great creator flows through all of this as possibility, as potentiality through me. And so I open to that space that I am. The spaciousness, the glory of the infinite great creator. It shows up as me and as each and every person in this room, each and every person who is online, each and every person who's awakening to the truth of their beingness, allowing that divine flow to activate our circuitry, to awaken, to enlighten, to be. And so as I claim this truth, I surrender any idea of less than, any idea of not enoughness, anything that I ever thought was my truth about being hard, difficult. And I embrace each opportunity as an opportunity to see me, to be me in a brighter way. And as I embrace this, I claim this for each and every person here, knowing that God's got it, that we've got it, and that it's already done. And so it is.